Good morning, colleagues. We'll start our working day, and I give the floor to Vasyl Hatsko, who is the head of the Democratic Alliance faction in the Kiev City Council. We'll talk about the problems of community housing and services complex, and about the condominiums in the capital of Ukraine, and also about the activity of our mayor. Hello, everybody. I guess we will start from the most important thing, which is what is the mission of the local authorities in the changes that have to happen in Kyiv, in particular in the communal services. We now see and watch how in Kiev good initiatives are flopping that pertain to the support of effective ownership. And first of all, I mean condominiums. When we talk about the special role of authorities, we have to recognize, and this in particular this position of the Democratic Alliance, that the major task in the communal services is to ruin the monopoly for the servicing of every separate building and create a competitive market for this. How can this look, and how this looks in European countries? In autumn, when the residents and co-owners of houses sum up the year and plan the next year, there's a queue at their thresholds from composed of different companies that offer different services of different quality with different process. So the condominiums and residential condominiums choose this or this company. In Kiev and in Ukraine, the situation is radically different. There's no competition. There's still monopoly for the servicing of our houses. And this monopoly is there irrespective of the form of ownership. And this is bad, whether this is a communal housing office or private housing office. If in our houses we still do not have condominiums, then we do not own or do not have a mechanism with the help of which we can say goodbye to one company and hire another. So in order to fulfill this global task, the task of destroying the monopoly for the servicing of our houses and to build a competitive market of housing and communal services, there has to be a major role of local authorities. If we want today to have a competitive market in this sphere, then the creation of condominiums in the city, in the capital, in Kiev, and in the entire country is priority number one. Let's have a look how and in what way these priorities are being realized, and whether the creation and support of condominiums is an important task for the authorities in Kiev today. Over the past year, a bit more than 30 condominiums were created in Kiev. If we compare this to the general number of houses, and this is almost 12,000 apartment buildings, we understand that the rates and dynamics of creating condominiums in the city is just a failure. While 37 condominiums were created last year in Kiev, we have barely touched the 7% mark of the entire housing fund. And this means that reforms and changes in the country in the context of destroying the monopoly in the housing services have failed. This is the best demonstration as of today of all those efforts of the authorities, both the preceding authorities and today's authorities. I mean this figure. We can, of course, go into details, saying where, at which stage, and in which way they create barriers on the part of officials, on the part of the state, on the part of the city authorities. But the figures say that the rates and dynamics of creating condominiums in the country are a total flop. Just 2 days ago, I came out of a cellar of a private house and office where I lived for several dozen hours, and I worked there so that the residents could get access to documentation, technical documentation that concerns their houses. And this practice is not unique, of course. It is absolutely spread across the city, both earlier and now after the changes have been made to the legislation. You cannot get access to what you own, to the technical documentation of your house that you will need to perform calculations and to get prepared to create a condominium is still problematic or remains closed at all. If we talk about the process of forming condominiums, which has to be maximally simple now, we understand that at different stages we meet colossal problems. The access to the technical documentation, the access to the list of your neighbors, whom you have to know in order to invite them to General Assembly. There are changes to the legislation that became valid this year, but they are implemented very slowly. And today, you cannot get easily this access in one single state body. And of course, we have talked already about technical documentation, and the issue of creating and registering condominiums is still not simple. But the major thing is what happens later to the condominiums. Today, when the authorities are ignoring the problems of condominiums and haven't made them their priority number one, we meet the situation when after the condominium is created, they meet colossal counteraction on the part of, for instance, natural monopolies like electricity suppliers, water suppliers. We have dozens of examples over last years when these institutions, in fact, they are monopolies, are pressuring and they impose fines through courts, they twist your hands, they impose charges for the services they have not provided. So this is a gigantic problem that people meet. This is the issue of people who are entitled to benefits, to people who are in debt. These are issues that condominiums meet after they start their functioning. And there's one very specific and concrete question in this situation. What is the motivation after all this people would have to create condominiums? The matter is that in order for the condominium in Kiev and in the country be created, we today need to make it so that the houses where condominiums are created are different to the better side from those houses where there are no condominiums. So the process of creating condominiums has to be maximally simple. Let's talk about this difference between a condominium and non-condominium house. Now we don't have any striking difference. Of course, with the help or due to self-organization of residents in some cases, the houses may be a bit more beautiful, a bit cleaner, but in order to achieve real difference, co-owners in condominiums have to get access to resources to modernize their houses. And here, to the utmost regret, we don't have anything to boast of. I'd take a Baltic model where the state and municipalities create conditions for people to get accessible and easy, light credit, and such people save at the because of the saving of energy and all this, and they have the real opportunity to pay back their loans. This is the model for Kiev. What the mayor and his team offer in return in lieu of this model. It is understood that Kiev or Ukraine don't have any adequate programs. There are efforts today to make themselves pleasing to the voters by repairing their doors and facades. 240 million hryvnia were channeled by the city council, for which, of course, the Udar and Solidarity were voting, headed by the mayor, in order to paint our houses anew, but this does not in any way influence the energy efficiency and energy saving in our houses, the cost of servicing them. This is just the expenditure, unjustified spending of money. If we talk not only about this year, but if we compare the figures that the city authorities use to provide for pseudo changes, we have to talk about several hundred million hryvnia where they were repairing our entrance doors. At the moment where our houses are energy sieves that lose a great amount of energy, but the Kiev politicians, in order to be liked by voters, just paint the walls of their houses. And there's no resource now, no access to resource which would provide for modernization. And this should be the biggest motive to attract co-owners and those who want to create condominiums. There's another component often overlooked. When we unite into condominiums, it happens so that never before, and even if we look, for instance, at my neighbors when we gather together, we don't have people who have managed houses or adjacent areas. So this is another role and mission of the authorities, to provide for the work to raise the capacity of this self-ruling community to adopt adequate, efficient decisions and implement them. It is evident that when we are talking about initiatives and what should the municipal authorities be doing so that the rate of creating the condominium change and so that people receive the incentive to create such condominium, that is definitely important. We need simplification of the procedure of creating the condominium. Now, according to the law, you can get all the technical documents, but still people see some resistance from private or other companies, from the communal housing offices and so on. And my question is, where are the municipal authorities in this whole process? I believe that people shouldn't be living in the housing offices to get their technical documentations. Basically, the civil servants should be doing that. There is Petro Pantelev, who's the deputy to Klitschko, and it would be good if he lives in the housing offices and forces them to execute the law. So we need resources, we need the programs that would provide resource for
modernization of houses. What I mean is that we need to create a very powerful center of support of the co-owners of condominium, where you can get legal assistance, protection from monopolists, and also the solution for your specific house with a specific proposal, how you can find resource to modernize your house. Also, you need to assistance for everything. There are the models ready, but we don't have all that in place yet. Now, in the nearest 3 months, we cannot count that similar initiatives will be implemented in Kiev, and we can analyze what has been offered by the city authorities in the last year in the sphere of household. Instead of ruining the monopoly of servicing our houses, instead of creating the competitive environment in the capital, the city mayor initiated the so-called reform of the household sector, according to which all the communal housing offices will be united into one company, into one office, not a single communal office. Even if it is a big merged office, it will not be able to ensure competition in the market. Instead of ruining monopoly, Klitschko and his team were putting all the efforts into creating one more monopoly. Besides the natural monopolies like Vodokanal, Kyivenergo, Kyivgas, we now have the super ЖЭК. The one which will be servicing all the houses in Kiev, and that now there are no elections taking place, but I believe still we shouldn't be just sitting and waiting, because now the housing sector is an awful state. People were said that the houses will be repaired, but we understand that this is impossible. I can quote two figures. If we take the old housing stock and if we multiply it to the number of money needed to modernize one house, we will understand that we need 50-55 billion hryvnias for Kiev. And all this idea that someone one day will allocate money from the budget and will modernize our houses, that really provoked people to continue waiting, to do nothing. And now we understand in which situation we are. As to creation of this condominium, there should be this work organized in the capital, so that anyone who is opposing creation of the condominium in the city should become the enemy to the city mayor. Only this way we will be able to achieve the situation when condominia will be created in the capital. Now the developers who are creating these private housing servicing offices and the companies which provide services, they come to these municipal authorities to resolve their problems. The developers come to get new land plot, to get some approval if the position of the city mayor and of municipal authorities is such that if you stop the initiative of creating the condominia in your city, then you get nothing. that relates to communal housing services, offices, JACs, and that also relates to specific civil servants who work in Kyiv city administration. Now, having seen this big problem, the resistance to creation of the condominium, now we initiate the creation of the register of the enemies of the condominium, and we invite Kyivites to come to us as to including such companies into this register. We will not be waiting till we have more chances to influence these companies so that they follow the law. And we are ready to help today. I'm ready to live in other JACs, but this should be happening with the support, with the initiative, with the participation of the residents. And the list of the enemies of the condominium we will be using not to allow the Kiev authorities to approve any decision in favor of those people who stop such initiatives. We prepared the draft resolution, which is about the following. Starting from 2006 till 2011, when the municipal authorities were influencing the tariffs in Kiev, we saw several times how these tariffs were approved with violation of legislation. They were not just approved with the violation of legislation, they were appealed against in the courts with the initiative of Vasyl Hatsko, who was at that time the politician in opposition. So today we have prepared the draft resolution of the Kiev Council, which says that the monopolists have to again recalculate the money, the tariffs, because they were charging illegally high tariffs, and we believe that the condominiums and cooperatives will use this scheme. Talking about how much money was illegally charged in the result of such non-approved or approved with the violations tariffs, the total amount is about 3 billion hryvnias. But we are talking about organized owner, and we believe that to get money back so that money could be used for some innovations and modernization, this could be done first of all by condominium and cooperatives. So the amount of money they can get back from Kiev monopolists is approximately 300 million hryvnias, to 3,000 hryvnias per apartment. I believe that people will know how to use this money to either consume less so that their houses are more comfortable and safer. Thank you.
Speaker, будь ласка.
Dear colleagues, any questions to our speaker? TV channel Social Country. We talked with those who had condominiums before the parliament adopted the law on condominiums, and they believe that there will be a new mechanism and there will be a program about making houses warmer and all this kind of stuff. What do you think? Has the new law started to work? Please, 2 minutes, because we have limited time. Very briefly. Yes, as of the 1st of July, some norms or some articles have become active. However, you see how we have to implement this. For instance, the law provides for the free and unhindered access to the technical documentation. However, in order to get this access, I had to live and work for 77 hours in the office of the director of the housing office. Because so these issues will remain very acute. We have colossal problems in all this, and then we will have problems with the realization of the norms that provide for the change in the companies that provide you with services. We will have to apply a lot of effort to make it work, this law work. But I do hope that there's now work going on. I hope that you won't have to live in housing offices again.